Hello and welcome back to Perspectives, bringing you our daily dose of news and views we hope are relevant to you. In today's show, as news pours in overnight, we report on a large mob of Hindus reportedly attacking a Gurdwara in Ontario and taking on Canadian police. And of course, we can't avoid the US elections and what's potentially in store. And India predictably digs its heels in over Canada's accusations against Amit Shah as they pile the insults once again on Trudeau. Meanwhile, back in the Punjab, the Dal Khalsa unite to formally request the Five Eyes nations to investigate Amit Shah's involvement in illegal activity across the world. All pointing to how Narendra Modi's strategy of division is now successfully indeed not only dividing his nation internally and across the diaspora, it's also managed to divide India away from the democratic world. Question is, will the Indian people wake up in time to stop it happening? Well, all this and more on today's show. Well, joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our amazing viewers out there today.
Indeed, and together we'll be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we'll be taking a look at lots of your great comments which have been filling up below the videos, so thanks so much for those. Right, James, let's get things started. What are you going to begin us with today?
It has been a long 48 to 72 hours in Canada, Angus, when it comes to the battle between the Sikhs and the Hindus right now. It is taking a very ugly turn. And what started with the Sikh protests outside of the Hindu temples. Now, let's go back a bit for people that don't understand or they're getting misinformation as to how this came to happen. Let's start there. And every year there is the consulate members for India that show up at certain locations in various cities around Metro Vancouver. Every year it's been at one of the temples in Vancouver, one of the temples in Surrey, and then I'm not sure what the other locations are, but those are the primary ones that we're looking at. Now, because they show up there to help process paperwork for seniors who are allegedly looking to get their benefits, their retirement, or whatever the case may be. However, the Sikh community is very suspicious that the government of India is utilizing this to keep track of people and to have an excuse to get into these facilities and to start or to continue their proven track of monitoring people. So this has obviously created a mistrust in the past. Now, when you couple that with the multiplier of the information that's come out about the Sikh community being targeted by India, whether it is in foreign interference, transnational repression, it is a very fragile time to be a part of the Sikh community or even the Hindu community, because the India government is really pushing to have a separation and to divide those two communities, and they are doing a good job of it. Yesterday, as we spoke about, there was some tension and some violence that broke out at one of the temples in Ontario. In addition to that, of course, there was violence that broke out at the Surrey Gurdwara. And in Vancouver, I think that the reason why they were able to avoid the violence the previous day, which would have been Saturday, was because the province of British Columbia courts actually issued a buffer zone order. So there was no protesting within a buffer zone around the Hindu temple in Vancouver or the Sikh Gurdwara temple in Vancouver either. And this was to stop any clashes and violence from breaking out because they anticipated it. So let's jump forward now to the last 48 hours. The protests, of course, have been the Khalistan individuals who are, of course, looking to operate and keep going forward with the Khalistan referendum, a peaceful referendum to look at the future of an independent Sikh nation. Now, this, of course, has been thrown into chaos with the India government assassinating Hardeep Singh Nijjar, with them trying to plot the assassination of Mr. Panin down in the U.S., with reports now coming out that there was involvement by the highest levels in India of ministers and government officials, as well as their intelligence community, in other violence arsons, attacks, and possibly murders in Canada and around the world. So it's really been just brewing, and it came to a head. We're going to take a quick peek at Toronto Star newspaper. Now, the Indians are claiming that the police, both in Milton, Ontario, in the Peel region of Ontario, and in Surrey, British Columbia, were very heavy-handed when it came to dealing with the Hindu group of rioters and protesters, as opposed to how they handled the Sikh community. Now, from my point of view of what I've been watching, it seems to be a lot of the weapons, the violence, and the pushing of buttons, so to speak, has been coming from the Hindu side. There have been religious leaders in the Hindu community and the diaspora that have actually been shouting that they will kill anyone who opposes them. They are talking about killing people in Canada, and they are chanting it. They are getting the crowds riled up and then setting them loose on the streets of Canada, and they go and attack the gurdwaras. And of course, we know that people get their tempers flaring. We know that emotions are raw. So there are going to be some people that lash out. But for all I can see, the Sikh community has been very reserved in how they handle it, which is pretty in line with the peaceful nature that they have. But don't get me wrong, we know that they will stand up and they will fight to protect their rights and to protect others who they feel are being stepped on and oppressed. So I must say, both sides are really going out of their way to try and find a way to calm their sides down, but also to protect their temples. I have been informed this evening that there are security groups. People are guarding the different gurdwaras across Canada in certain cities, and I would assume that the Hindus are guarding theirs as well. But we must remember that we don't even have a high commissioner in Canada from India right now. They have an acting commissioner, but nobody that's actually at the top, and they still have not replaced a lot of the diplomats who were expelled from the country. So this here again is some images here of them jumping on cars of different sides. They are also in many areas, they were carrying axes and hatchets and steel bars, which I'll show you a photo of that as well. But let's take a look at a video here of the police coming in when weapons were drawn, the people were flowing into the streets, and it just became chaotic there. And this is, again, I believe this is the Milton, Ontario incident that we're going to show here. Apologies there, Angus. I'm just going to pull that up. Yeah, sorry, I thought I had that open already. Yeah, here we go. So, yeah, as I said, the tempers are flaring on all sides of the situation. So let's take a look at a video from the Milton, Ontario location where the police had to come in and really take an aggressive So as you can see, Angus, the temperatures were rising, and again, they estimate that there were about 400 Hindus that actually went down and charged the Sikh Gurdwara in Milton as well. So far, I know that in Surrey that it wasn't quite as bad as it was in Ontario. However, there were 3 arrests made at the Surrey event, and those were all actually Hindu individuals from that community who were making threats. They were disobeying orders from police officers. They were being violent and threatening, as well as resisting arrest and so forth. So again, it is just out of control right now. And I'm just going to go up to where there are the Hindus that are stating that the police are actually supportive and in a passive aggressive sort of nature, supporting the Khalistan side of the dispute. However, law enforcement is very clear that they are not supporting one side or another. They are there to act in the best interest of public safety, and that is what they are doing. With that said, there is one Peel Regional Police officer, as you can see him in uniform on the left image, and then in his personal wear on the right. Now, he was off duty. He actually attended one of the protests in Brampton. He did wave a flag, but he was not part of the aggressive group at all. But just the fact that he was there at the protest and taking part in it, he has been suspended. Now, they do not take lightly in Canada when police officers are involved in any type of event that could pull them into any type of questionable action, or for their actions to be questioned in any level of their integrity. So again, that is why they have suspended that officer, because it is against their code of conduct, and it is very clear. So it just shows very clearly that they are not picking sides. They are not picking favorites. They are there to do a job, regardless as to whether you are Sikh. No matter if you are Hindu, they have to do a job to protect the community. When you get to a point here, and I'm going to go to one more recording here, which is on the BAS website, which they're great. They come out with a lot of very good news about the referendum, about the different Sikh events. But they have a very clear image of the Hindus when they were out with weapons and actually threatening people with those. So let's take a look here. I'm going to just make sure that, yes, you can see that. Okay. So as you can see, I mean, they're threatening, they're screaming. They were actually challenging individuals. If a vehicle stopped, they were kicking cars, they were denting them, damaging them. They were grabbing their genitalia and making really crude gestures towards the Sikhs, and just really threatening manners, when that's why the police had to run in at that point in the previous video, was because of actions such as this, blocking the streets, but mostly because they were such a threatening manner towards people. And you can see why there were several arrests made at that event as well. From the Hindu side. And once again, the leadership at various Hindu temples have been, again, making threats and encouraging violence against the Sikh community and against anyone who stands in their way at getting to act out against the Sikh community. So anybody that gets in their way is fair game in their opinion. So it's really boiled over. Modi has got to be sitting there in India just loving all of this, because it is definitely putting the divide in the two communities that he wants. He wants them focused on fighting with each other to make the international community side with his narrative, and that is unfortunately where we're at. The mayor of Surrey, British Columbia, stepped in and said that she's saddened by the current events and that she assures that all steps will be taken to maintain public safety and security. And the hundreds of people that have rioted and protested and just really taken it beyond that to levels of violence. Peaceful protest is something that we're proud of supporting in Canada, but when it gets to this point, it is going to really lose the support of the public, and the public is not going to stand by while anybody is shouting out to kill Canadians, no matter what the dispute is. You don't yell out that you're going to start killing Canadians and expect nobody to stand up. Justin Trudeau has also remarked that he is very disturbed by what's going on and is calling for all sides to take a calmer approach. And as for Modi, of course, he is chirping out in the media and blaming Canada, blaming us for harboring all of this violence and allowing it to happen and encouraging it. So again, it's feeding right into Modi's narrative, and we've got to make sure that people get control of this before it gets too far. I mean, it's already too far, but it could get much worse before it gets better if calmer heads don't prevail, Angus.
Yeah, it's outrageous, isn't it? It's this sort of behaviour is intolerable, and we cannot tolerate this sort of behaviour in the West. But do you know what? This is fantastic. Why is it fantastic? This is a PR disaster for India, for Narendra Modi. Now, James, you say Narendra Modi is rubbing his hands with glee. He may well be rubbing his hands with glee. This is his divide and conquer strategy. But do you know what? The divide and conquer strategy is a massive strategic disaster, because right now all these images are spreading around social media. They're hitting mainstream media. This is a mob of Hindus, as being seen right across Canada and actually other parts of the world. Hindu mobs waving the Indian flag are now hitting mainstream media, shouting "Death to Canadians." All this is doing, it is painting India now, where previously people actually had a fairly favourable and benign view of India. Now people are now associating India and Narendra Modi with violence, with death threats. Contrast that with what we've reported regularly on about Khalistani campaigners who've been out there peacefully chanting, shouting, whatever, waving the wonderful Khalistan flags, but they've always been peaceful, and the Sikh community have been out there seen doing very benign activities to their local communities. So contrast these two public relation images. It's very, very clear. Narendra Modi is desperate to divide India, divide the diaspora. He is absolutely succeeding beyond his wildest dreams in that strategy. But look what's happening. It is dividing the diaspora. But one side is now being held up as a paragon of virtue. It is being held up as peaceful protest, democracy in all its splendour, waving a Khalistan flag in peaceful protests right across the world. Contrast that with violent Hindu mobs attacking the police, attacking the public, attacking Gurdwaras, shouting slogans, shouting dreadful things, violence, loud. This is not democratic process. All this is doing is just highlighting what India represents. This is wonderful news, and I hate to say that in such positive terms, but you have to take 10 steps back from this. When you remove yourself from the coalface, so to speak, from the sharp end of it, which, yes, there is this immediate knee-jerk outrage. This is disgusting. Yes, it is. Now you take 10 steps back and look at the bigger picture. What's happening strategically here? Very clearly, Narendra Modi's strategy of division, spreading anti-Sikh hatred, all it's doing is it's backfiring spectacularly. The mainstream media across the democratic world is now turning its eyes on India. Who are these Khalistan people? What are they campaigning about? They start looking at 1984, the genocide. They start looking now at Narendra Modi's government and his oppression of minorities in India. They start looking at his human rights record. All these human rights organisations all around the world who've been desperately trying to hit the mainstream media with their reports of what Narendra Modi's been up to and his terrible actions against human rights in India. Suddenly, their voices are being heard by mainstream media who are hungry for news and information about India. So suddenly the agenda is shifting. This is no longer Narendra Modi's narrative, because Narendra Modi's narrative has now lost all credibility because he's been out there murdering innocent citizens of Canada, trying to murder innocent citizens of the United States and here in the UK. So his whole narrative is dissolving. It's falling apart. It has no credibility. The Western media is starting to understand what India is, what it's about, that it is becoming a joker, it's farcical, it's losing credibility, it's losing its reputation. Whereas, on the other hand, you've got the whole Khalistan campaign, the whole Khalistan movement, who've been very articulate, who've been very intelligent, who've been very peaceful. They've been campaigning in a very democratic way. They've gone through the proper processes and protocols of the rule of law, of democracy. They've lobbied and they've campaigned in a usual democratic way. Contrast that with what's happening with India. It's very clear to me, James, who's winning this war. There was a battle last night. You rightly called it a battle. There are these battles taking place across the streets. The war is being won by the Khalistan campaign, plain and simple.
Absolutely, but at the end of the day, I think that all sides are losing some areas that are totally outside of what the intended purpose of this whole thing is, and that is, whether or not the India government is actually sponsoring a lot of the Hindus to take part and to agitate and to act out in violence to really draw in the Sikhs in that regard. But I just, in Canada, it is very tough to get past that when these are the visuals that most Canadians are seeing. They are going to not look at the depth of what's going on right now, and I think that can also push the pressure on the politicians and the police and everybody else to really act outside of calmness. And I don't want to see either side escalating it. I don't want to see the police escalating, because some of the footage I've seen where certain individual officers, I think, have overstepped their authority and what they have been trained to do as professional officers. So it's just, I really hope it calms down before it gets to the next level, which I'm worried it might. But with that, Angus, let's move on to the next story. I'm going to just cover briefly, and I just wanted to touch on it being Election Day in the USA. Where it's going to go, we don't know, Angus. However, at this point, I would say that the results are probably going to be too close to call. That's my prediction at this point. And, the whining continues from both sides. And the other day, NBC actually aired a segment of Saturday Night Live, whereas Harris showed up unexpectedly and made an appearance. So, of course, that violated actual federal campaign laws, because they have to offer all candidates equal time. So the station negotiated that they would air extra commercial time for Donald Trump. So it's just a tit for tat going back and forth as the race is finally coming to an end. The election polls will be opening in mere hours. What that's going to mean, no matter who wins, I think that there's going to be a delay and a halt on a lot of international relations and a lot of international issues. I think that regardless as to who wins, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be legal fights. But I think around the world, they're going to wait until mid-January, after the hopefully peaceful transition of power. I think that the international community is not going to have confidence right now in the U.S. in terms of making commitments, trade deals, security deals, or anything else. I think that's all going to be pretty much put aside. It's going to be just public relations and public appearances and minor things between now and January. I don't think much is going to be done regardless as to the outcome of the election. If it continues that way, it's going to have a very big impact on a lot of Americans, because they won't be able to get the full services of government agencies. It's going to pull into question budgets and just so much chaos. I'm hoping that I'm wrong on that, but hey, if Trump wins, then he's going to have Musk in there, and I hope that he can do better for the White House than he does for exploding Teslas. But I think that if Trump was to lose, Musk's just gonna take one of Trump's lines, look at Trump and say, hey, I don't hang out with losers. So I think it's going to be a very interesting day tomorrow, Angus. I was going to go a bit more depth into it, but the first story I thought deserved a bit more time. So let's just hope that everything moves peacefully tomorrow. Let's hope that the National Guard and that is not needed. I know that they are being strategically positioned throughout the country to make sure that things remain calm once the results are in tomorrow night or the following morning. So let's wish all of our American viewers and all of our American family and friends All of the best tomorrow. Get out to vote, no matter who you're voting for. The most important thing is to get out and vote. And I think that that's something that people could really learn from the Khalistan referendum, that they've been waiting decades to be able to voice their opinion for this referendum. Here, you get to do this every 4 years in the U.S., so get out and vote tomorrow. Make your voice heard no matter who you're voting for. Get out there and do it.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important message. The most important thing is that everybody does at least vote. I don't think there's an awful lot to say about this. I think we are at that dreadful moment of polling, not polling day, of actual election day, when everybody's speculating. There's a million stories milling around, but everybody's just waiting in this awful limbo period, waiting for results to start coming through. Pollsters, if you look at all the polls, it depends who's commissioned the poll. Polls are swinging this way and that way. They're actually saying nothing other than it's just too close to call. And you can't believe polls anyway. I think over the next 24, 48 hours, it's going to be a fairly tense day or two. But I think the only thing I think that is predictable about this election is that I think the next 6 months are still going to be very unsettled. I think there's going to be an awful lot of legal cases because it is so close to call. It's going to be like, I think, was it the George Bush Jr. election a few years ago, when was it Florida? There's all sorts of legal cases flying around, contesting results, recounts, and was it the hanging chads, or what I seem to remember, going back in my dim and distant memory. I think it's going to be a lot like that.
Different to Nixon.
Exactly. Well, let's see which way the dice fall on this one. As I say, it's desperately close to fall, and the trouble is, the two sides are so deeply polarised. I do fear for the US, and I mean, even just there was an article in one of our right-wing newspapers today. Where I think it was the guy who tried to assassinate Trump. He was predicting civil war if Trump won today. But I've heard similar things saying from the Republican side, if Kamala Harris wins, there will be civil war. Which again, this sort of talk, it's not even rhetoric. This is just talk from the grassroots. If this is the feeling on the ground in the US, that shows just how not just how polarised, but how emotional this contest has become, and it's become deeply dangerous. I've even heard predictions that the United States will break up, in the coming years. There's been all sorts of horoscope specialists who've been predicting that as a result of this deep polarisation between left and right in the US, which actually does actually reflect a division here in the UK and Europe. Actually, this deep division between left and right, certainly playing out across the US. They're actually predicting the breakup of the United States, God forbid. So, we are in a deeply unstable world at the moment. There's an awful lot going on. What we do need, unfortunately, whichever side you support, we need good, strong, powerful leadership. That's actually, I think, what we've been lacking over the last few years. I'm certainly no fan of Biden, but whichever side is in charge, we need strong, powerful, dominant leadership just to give the world direction, if nothing else. And I think that's what's been lacking in recent years, which I think is why we're in a bit of a mess globally speaking. But we shall see, James. We will be reporting on that, no doubt, as the cookie crumbles.
Hey, maybe if they break up, we can claim Florida as part of Canada.
Indeed. And I think from our side,
to Mar-a-Lago and send Trump over to Mexico. There's a wall there. He can't get back unless he has a ladder. But
well, all I think we can hope for is if it all goes pear-shaped, is that Khalistan becomes a reality very soon, and we can all run away and hide in Khalistan until all the horribleness goes away. We shall see. So
there you go.
Anyway, right, let's move on to my first story. And we're looking at, once again, it's Amit Shah, this ongoing story which has been bubbling away really since the Canadian government stood up and actually openly accused of Amit Shah of being involved in all these illegal activities going on across the Western nations. And of course, referring there to the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, the attempted murder of Gurpreet Singh Pannoon, amongst many others, and of course the questionable death of Avtar Singh Kandar here in the UK. And yeah, the finger of suspicion and the finger of guilt has been pointed at Amit Shah very openly. And as a result, how have India reacted? Well, it's all very predictable. India has yet again dug in its heels in a very stubborn, arrogant, belligerent manner, basically saying, how dare you accuse us with these absurd allegations? They're all nonsense, and we deny everything. Not just deny everything, they've been flinging mud once again at Justin Trudeau. And one of the spokespersons of the Indian government has been out publicly in front of the world's cameras to fight back on this. And this happened over the weekend, actually. They publicly denied that Home Minister Amit Shah had indeed plotted to target Sikh and Khalistani activists on Canadian soil, and said it had officially rebuked Ottawa over what it calls the absurd and baseless allegation. Now, of course, Canada, as we know, is home to the largest Sikh community outside of India and includes activists for Khalistan, as we regularly report on. So it's unsurprising then that this spat has really escalated, particularly between Canada and India. And of course, we talked often about this obsessive agenda of the Brahmins and the BJP and the RSS to try and oppress not just the Khalistan movement, which it sees as a huge threat to not just the integrity of the Indian territory, but also to the Brahmin control of India. And it's this obsessive agenda that is getting India into a bit of a hole. And Canadian officials said that Ottawa had, of course, traced a broader campaign targeting the Khalistan campaigners and the Sikh activists to, indeed, the highest levels of the Indian government, implicating Prime Minister Narendra Modi's powerful right-hand man. And, of course, this has gone up this chain of command where the level of evidence, if you recall when Trudeau stood up a year ago and openly accused India, generally speaking, of being involved in this, of course, India stood up and has barraged Canada with its own media, saying, how dare Trudeau say this? It's all nonsense. Where's your evidence? And, of course, giving the Canadian right wing a bit of an opportunity to wade in as well, saying, yeah, Trudeau, where's your evidence? Well, Trudeau actually started rolling out the evidence. He's been, in piecemeal fashion, he's been releasing this evidence through various media outlets and, of course, through CSIS and RCMP publications. They have actually been releasing evidence in a piecemeal basis. And as a result, Randhir Jaiswal, he's the Indian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, said that a Canadian diplomat had been summoned and issued a letter to formally protest the accusation against Amit Shah. Testifying before a Canadian Parliamentary Committee just this week, Deputy Foreign Minister David Morrison in Canada confirmed this Washington Post story implicating Shah in a plot to intimidate and even kill Canadian Sikhs. The Post cited an unnamed senior Canadian official as having said that Shah authorised an intelligence gathering and attack campaign, including, of course, the killing of Najjar. And Morrison said that he was indeed the source of this information, telling the committee, the journalist called me and asked me if I was that person. I confirmed, yes, I was that person. Now, Jaiswal hit back for New Delhi on Saturday by accusing Canadian officials of deliberately leaking unfounded insinuations to the media to discredit India. Now, of course, Amit Shah has overseen India's internal security forces as his role as Home Minister. He's often called India's second most powerful person after Prime Minister Modi, whom he has served loyally for decades. And Shah has a reputation as a masterful political strategist and was credited by Modi for engineering his own 2014 election win that swept the BJP to power just 10 years ago. So, yeah, I'm going to play for you now. This is Randhir Jaiswal speaking publicly. Let me play you some of his quotations.
We had summoned the representative of the Canadian High Commission yesterday. A diplomatic note was handed over in reference to the proceedings of the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security in Ottawa on October 29th, 2024. It was conveyed in the note that the Government of India protests in the strongest terms to the absurd and baseless references made to the Union Home Minister of India. In fact, the revelation that high Canadian officials deliberately leak unfounded insinuations to the international media as part of a conscious strategy to discredit India and influence other nations only confirms the view Government of India has long held about current Canadian government's political agenda and behavioral pattern. Such irresponsible actions will have serious consequences for bilateral ties.
So there's a few interesting parts there. First of all, the absurd and baseless references he goes on about these accusations. Now, firstly, of course, India trying to maintain a sort of air of dignity amongst this, whereas actually in reality they're facing a barrage of accusations from a Western democratic nation. But they're trying to give this air of, well, we're still a professional government, and this air of dignity, which actually is falling apart, I have to say, on a daily basis. But what's interesting there is one of their key issues that they're raising here is that they're saying this deliberate leak to international media of these accusations. Now, in fact, what he's referring to here is, of course, this where the Canadian government sent this information to the Washington Post to essentially broadcast it globally. Now, the reason for this that he actually, that Randhir Jaiswal is not admitting to, the reason the Canadian government did this is because after their meeting, there was a meeting in Singapore with Ajit Doval, laying out these accusations, saying, look, we've got the evidence now. We've collared you. We've caught you red-handed in these actions. And Ajit Doval's response was, we'll deny everything, and that's it, and I will deny that this meeting even took place. As soon as he got back to India, the Indian media, mainstream media, the Godi media, went into overdrive and started bombarding the world with anti-Trudeau propaganda, anti-Canada propaganda, coming out with outrageous claims and all these dreadful accusations against Canada. As a result, Canada said, right, if you want to play that game, we were going to respect the diplomatic wishes of both sides and not say anything publicly. If you want to play that game, then we will leak this information to the Washington Post. The reason not the Canadian media, and this upset the Canadian media because it wasn't them who got the scoop on it, it was the Washington Post. The reason they went to the Washington Post across the border in the US is because they knew that the Washington Post had a global reach. In other words, this information wasn't just coming from the partisan Canadian media, it was coming from the highly respected media in the United States, and therefore will be taken a lot more seriously. So that's why, and this is why India are particularly upset, because it turns out that a respected global news outlet got the scoop, and therefore that the world has taken notice. Let me continue more of these quotes from the spokesperson.
All along we have been making our point very clear about our views very clear about extremism and the culture of violence and anti-India activities in Canada. This is our core concern with the Canadian government, and we hope that they will take action against these activities. Some of our consular officials were recently informed by the Canadian government that they have been and continued to be under audio and video surveillance. Their communications have also been intercepted. We have formally protested to the Canadian government as we deem these actions to be a flagrant violation of relevant diplomatic and consular conventions.
Okay, a couple of interesting points there. Once again, there's this reference to the reasons why Trudeau has made these accusations, and they're trying again to undermine Trudeau's credibility by saying it's all part of his political agenda to try and maintain votes. We've talked a lot about that, James, and it's nonsense. Actually, he's been damaged politically by bringing up these accusations. So that whole argument just actually has no credibility. And there's also this implied reference as well to Canada being a harbourer of terrorists, because of course they claim that all Khalistani campaigners are terrorists. Again, that just doesn't wash anymore. That whole argument has just lost any credibility. And this whole attack against Canada that they keep maintaining, again, it's part of this whole strategic mistake that Narendra Modi is making, coming up with saying that Canada is harbouring terrorists. Again, it's just been proven over and over again. It's not just nonsense. It's now looking a little farcical now. So again, I think this dignified stance that India are trying to take is again starting to look just a little bit thin and a little bit childish now. The one part here actually I do find interesting is that he claims that the Canadian government have admitted to India that they are continuing to keep Indian officials in Canada under audio and video surveillance. Now, of course, we all know our security forces keep all sorts of people under surveillance clandestinely, and they certainly don't admit to it. One assumes it's all done under the guise of legality. That usually, certainly here in the UK, and I think it's the same in Canada as well, that they do need some form of legal authorization to surveil anybody, particularly anybody under diplomatic immunity. There has to be a national interest reason behind it. That has to be then signed off with a legal basis. I'm very surprised that Canada would admit to this to India, saying, yes, we are surveilling. India knows that they are. The Canadian intelligence services, of course, know that they're doing. Everybody knows they're doing. It's just that it's never publicly admitted. Why would you publicly admit it? Because it's slightly embarrassing. So I find that side of the story a little bit strange, and I think there's probably a bit more to that side of the story than meets the eye. But unfortunately, yes, James, I think this is a case of it's same old, same old. Canada's made the accusations. We all know that Amit Shah is implicated. All the evidence is just, even common sense points to the fact, just following the trail of even what's in the public domain, it all points to Amit Shah, Ajit Doval, and of course by implication Narendra Modi. We all know they're involved in it. There's almost there's no denying it now. It's all over bar the actual legal case. James, I think this story, as they say, just runs and runs.
And I love that he tries to take the high horse, take the high road and say, oh, it's against diplomatic and consular conventions. Well, okay, what do you call killing Canadian citizens on Canadian soil? What do you call threatening Canadians on Canadian soil? What do you call arson? What do you call harassment? What do you call, I could go on and on. And oh my goodness, he listened to my phone call. That's worse than all of it. It's just ridiculous. And this is just a continuation of the India government and the consular representatives just trying to continue to undermine the integrity and the trust in our proud Sikh community. That's all it is, just more propaganda shit.
It is, and actually, when I watch these Indian spokespeople, in particular Randir Jaiswal coming up with his press conferences, it does remind me, and I don't know if you remember this, James, in the Iraq War, when the US troops were marching on Baghdad. Chemical Ali, I think, was his nickname. They had that wonderful spokesperson for Saddam Hussein who used to appear in the world's press on a daily basis, spouting the Iraqi Saddam Hussein propaganda, saying, all is good, we will defeat the American invaders. Now, there's no chance. We have millions of troops, and this was all the while that the American tanks, I think, literally were on the outskirts of Baghdad, and he was there smiling with his jovial face whilst the world laughed at him, and he became this figure of, in fact, he actually became highly popular because he was actually become such a farcical figure with his wonderful propaganda on a daily basis. I think India is almost falling into that same trap where these spokespeople are wheeled out in front of the world press, just churning out this propaganda which people are now almost laughing at because they know it's absolute nonsense, James. And I think India are falling into this same old trap.
Absolutely, Angus. It's just going to keep spinning. But let's hope that we see an end to that soon. Because again, Modi's winning at this point. Both sides need to realize that he's playing them, and it just upsets me that so many people are going to get hurt in the process, Angus.
Well, let's hope not. Let's hope not. And of course, this is having impact not just across the diaspora, but of course in the Punjab. And my next story actually comes from the Punjab itself. This is a meeting of the Dal Khalsa, who are, of course, taking a very keen interest in global affairs and Narendra Modi's strategy on this. And in the Fatehgarh Sahib, back in the Punjab, a seminar was organised by the pro-freedom Sikh organisation Dal Khalsa, of course, on the subject of the 40-year saga of extrajudicial killings and the changing facets of Sikh resistance. This was the title of their seminar. So there was a bit of a get-together to discuss a lot of these ongoing issues. And the speakers expressed deep concern over the alarming situation that has arisen in the wake of these killings of pro-freedom Sikh activists the world over. Describing Canada's accusation of Amit Shah's alleged involvement in these killings of Sikhs as something very serious, the Dal Khalsa leaders requested the international community, especially the Five Eyes Alliance, to formally investigate the accusation levelled by Canada and seek a response from the government of India. Even the Prime Minister Narendra Modi owes the truthful answer to the Sikhs of Punjab, said Dal Khalsa President Harpal Singh Chima. The leaders of the organisation clearly believed that the only solution to prevent the reoccurrence of massacres like 1984, the genocide of 1984, is, unsurprisingly, the independence of Punjab from Indian hegemony, as they describe it. The organisation had also put up big banners in the Gurdwara complex to convey its message in this regard. A banner with a picture of Amit Shah and Ajit Doval was put up on which it was written, "They are the brains behind India's policy of transnational repression. Will the UN, UK and US hold them accountable?" Well, it's very clear what the Dal Khalsa thinks. They're certainly not pulling their punches. They make it very clear who they see as behind the transnational repression behaviour of India. And the organisers of the seminar said that due to the tireless efforts of the Sikh diaspora, the November 1984 genocide has been duly recognised as indeed officially as a genocide by the assemblies of California and Connecticut in America and Ontario province in Canada. And of course here in the UK, lots of things going on here in that regard to get it officially recognised as a genocide. Thanking these states, Dal Khalsa appealed to the federal governments of Western and European nations to pass similar resolutions in their respective parliaments recognising Sikh killings as genocide. Well, it's happening here in the UK. The pressure is on. That pressure is coming up for the grassroots to the UK Parliament to also recognise this officially as a genocide. That is on its way. Sikh Federation UK working very hard. That is one of its foundational principles, is to get the genocide recognised officially here in the UK as a genocide. On Canada listing India in its adversary list after China, Iran and North Korea. Just put that into context. This is India now sitting alongside China, Iran, North Korea. This is how low India's reputation has sunk on the world stage, that now organisations are calling for it to be put into the same bucket as countries like Iran and North Korea. These are countries that we almost laugh at in their totalitarian regimes. That's how bad they've become. Now India is falling into the same. And again, to our Hindu audience, if the Hindus watch this, is this really what you want for your country? This is how you are being seen on the global stage. This is the perspective of India. This is the image of India. You're now being seen alongside the likes of North Korea and Iran. Is this really what you want for your country? Anyway, the Dal Khalsa leaders squarely blamed India's foreign minister for such a mess, who not only rejected but also downplayed Trudeau's repeated appeals to Indian leadership to cooperate in the investigation of Nijjar's killing. Now, the organisation leader, Harpal Singh, hits out at the successive governments formed in New Delhi, and he said, first they call us terrorists, now they added a new name, gangsters, to us. First they put a Pakistani tag on us. Yeah, this old conspiracy claiming that Khalistan movement was funded and pushed by Pakistan. What a load of nonsense. Now they've placed a Canadian tag on us. And all this was being done to malign our image world over, to portray the Sikh struggle for independence with a communal and violent brush. Absolutely, and I think this sums up what we said all along, is they tried all these tactics. They tried to lay the blame on the Khalistan movement as being terrorists, as being gangsters, as being drug peddlers, of just being an entity of Pakistan intelligence, and now they're saying, oh, it's a Canadian thing. I mean, I'm sorry, India, this is really not the case. You're never going to defeat the Khalistan movement, primarily because you don't understand what it is. You can't even identify what it is. You claim it's all these other things. It's not. The Khalistan movement is a simple expression and outpouring of democracy, of the people of the Punjab wanting self-determination. Until you recognise that, you are never going to be able to deal with this problem, whether positively or negatively. That's the issue that the Indian government faces. Party President Harpal Singh Chima of the Dal Khalsa emphasised the need to challenge and counter the narrative created by the state to defame the Sikh cause. And his final words are, Quam has an agenda. We have our rightful aspirations and desires. There should be a political solution to the Punjab problem. It should be done under the aegis of the United Nations through the right to self-determination law. I beg your pardon, that was President Paramjit Singh Mand who made that statement. Other people at the Dal Khalsa conference were human rights defender Professor Jagmohan Singh, Amrit Kaur. She's the daughter of Shahid Beyant Singh, the assassin of the tyrant Indira Gandhi. SGPC member Karnal Singh Panjoli, Ravinder Pal Singh Khalsa, and district court lawyers participated in the event. And a large number of youths associated with the United Sikh Students' Federation, the USSF, led by Gurlal Singh, and members of student organisation SATH, led by Jujar Singh, who also participated in the seminar. And after the seminar, a prayer was held at the historical Gurdwara Sahib to pay homage to thousands of innocent Sikh men, women and children who were butchered by frenzied mobs under the full patronage of the state. So there you go, James. I'm glad to report that really I think Sikh organisations both in the Punjab and of course across the diaspora are uniting now. I think we're seeing a great unification where the RSS has worked for decades to divide and conquer the Sikh communities by deliberately trying to divide these organisations and segmenting them. Now, at last, finally, the Sikh community is uniting again under the banners of the Sikh Federation, under the Dal Khalsa. They're coming together once again. Amrit Pal Singh and his colleagues have done a lot of work in that regard. Look what's happened to him, unfortunately, and we will continue to campaign for his release. But fortunately, the movement is in the right direction. It is all about unification. It is unifying and aligning the message, and this is what will deliver Khalistan. It's happening, it's getting closer, and this unification is this powerful force now that is almost becoming unstoppable, James.
Absolutely, Angus. Like we've said before, democracy becomes more powerful with numbers. And, that's what it's all about, is people coming together and supporting each other in a common goal. And with that said, just a reminder to all of our friends and viewers in New Zealand that November 17th, get out and make your vote heard in the Khalistan referendum. Don't forget to mark your calendars, November 17th, because that's what it is all about. The international Sikh community coming together and supporting each other. Stand strong.
Absolutely. Spot on. We look forward to if you manage to attend there, if we have any viewers in New Zealand, firstly, let us know you're in New Zealand. It'd be lovely to know that you're there. And likewise, if you attend, please do get to the referendum, cast your vote, whichever way it falls. But if you get any footage, take some footage, even 10 seconds worth, send us to our email address, message@satlodgetv.com. Send us some footage. We would love to report on the footage. If you want to appear in front of your camera, do a little selfie. Do a selfie to the camera. Send us the video footage. We'd love to report on that. But on that note, James, let us move on to our final section, of course, our comments section, where it's lovely to invite our audience to get involved in the show. And goodness me, many of you have indeed got involved. And thank you so much for thousands of comments that have been pouring in. Loads of really great comments. Freddie Mercury, one of our regular commenters, complimented us on this thumbnail, which of course made Freddie laugh. It's more of an insult to jesters, though. Absolutely. And in fact, it is a court jester or even the court fool. And it was a very deliberate thumbnail, really, I think, just to highlight the fact that actually, and coming back to what we were talking about earlier, James, is that Narendra Modi and the RSS's strategy is spectacularly backfiring. It is actually doing more benefit to the Khalistan cause than even the Khalistan movement could ever wish for. Essentially, Narendra Modi and the RSS are handing Khalistan on a plate. This is what this thumbnail was all about. Their strategic errors, this whole strategy of targeting Khalistan campaigners with violence and then following it up, compounding this, doubling down on their mistake by this belligerent attitude on the world stage. It is doing a wonderful service for the Khalistan movement, is it not, James?
Oh, it is, Angus. It's really getting the Khalistan awareness out there in ways that nobody could have predicted. I mean, it's in terms of raising that awareness and understanding and gaining support for the Khalistan movement and their right to a sovereign and independent nation. The world knows about it now.
I mean, one wonders if Narendra Modi is actually a sleeper agent for the Khalistan movement. He's done so much good for the Khalistan cause that maybe he will out himself when Khalistan is established in the foreseeable future. He will out himself and said, "That was me, guys." So thank you to Narendra Modi. Okay, a bit more seriously now. Freddie finalises his comment with, "I hope David Lammy," this is the UK Foreign Secretary, he hopes that David Lammy doesn't end up disappointing us as well. Well, we will see. Unfortunately, I am very cynical, as I've said on every occasion. My hopes are not great for David Lammy. We will see. But yeah, let's hope he doesn't disappoint the community as well. Gursavak Singh also says he's used to delivering things because he's a tea seller and how to serve things on a plate. So absolutely. I actually don't know Mr. Modi's background. I think he's probably been in politics most of his life. He's a very accomplished politician. Right. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. He's serving Khalistan up like a tea seller. So couldn't have put it better myself. Innocent Happy says, "Good work, Five Eyes." Absolutely. Well, the Five Eyes we talked about, James, they've been slightly divided in the sense that Canada has obviously been the vanguard of the activity against India. US has been pretty much shoulder to shoulder. I would say the UK likewise has been a little bit disappointing. Australia and New Zealand, again, also slightly subdued in their reaction. So whilst the Five Eyes does remain united, I would say differing levels of reaction to India there, James.
Absolutely, but I also look at the diplomatic issues that the UK is dealing with to try and secure the freedom of certain individuals who are in captivity in India. So I think that there's some political finesse that's being played out there.
Indeed. Now, a couple of comments about the petition. And thank you to Pacific Bridge and Gurpinder Bra, who have both signed the petition. Thank you for that. Thank you for watching from Vancouver. And yes, absolutely, Gurpinder, do spread that word. Get more people to sign that petition. It's really important that people go out and sign that petition. And you tell everybody that you can. Get out there, sign that petition, must they not, James?
Absolutely. Just over a month left before closing. So make sure you, absolutely spread the word.
And just to correct myself on that, I said all Canadian citizens can sign it. It's not just Canadian citizens. If you're a resident in Canada, so if you're a resident in Canada, you can get it signed.
Permanent
so please
resident,
sign that
yes.
petition. Permanent resident, indeed.
Yeah.
Mukhtar Singh says, "Thanks for exposing the truth of the rogue lawless state of India. 60% of BJP MPs have criminal records." How absolutely true. I can't remember the exact statistic, but I do know it is something horrific. And yes, we did indeed report on that a while ago. How many MPs in the Lok Sabha have criminal records? It is an absolute outrage. And I think as we said at the time and have said since, is that what sort of example does this send to the people of India? If they think they're MPs, it's okay for an MP to have a criminal record. And these aren't just minor crimes. These are serious crimes. Sexual assault against women, amongst many other serious crimes. So absolutely. And then Mukhtar signs off by saying that it's very clear the Indian government agencies were involved in the Air India bombing. James, I think, yes, we couldn't disagree with that.
Absolutely, yeah. And as I said, all more reason for people to get out there and sign that petition. I showed you guys how easy it was online. It takes a minute. Boom, signed, done, sealed, delivered.
Indeed. Right, next set of comments. This was my discussion with Bhajan Singh Binder, beg your pardon. So my discussion with Bhajan looked at the RSS and their constant attacks against the Khalistan movement. And it did evoke a lot of comments, a lot of interesting comments. And this one actually, this is one of many, and I've actually had to filter out a lot of the responses on this one. This is a huge thread, which was it picked up a few interesting points. It was Mohand and Noah who made the point that there was an independent Sikh kingdom before 1849. It was destroyed by the British. It was broken into two. It was not part of India, but it will again rise up again. Now, SSK Trucking says, "I think Pakistan's side Punjabis are ready to merge in with us, except Urdu-speaking people came across Yamuna in 1947. So yes, of course, as we know, in partition in 1947, the Punjab was split into two in that dreadful time when so many Sikhs were murdered, massacred, a terrible time. And of course, those now on the Pakistan side of Punjab primarily speak Urdu. And so this whole thread actually was about language and how relevant language is to this, of course. And we talked a lot about the importance of maintaining Punjabi as a language. It's all part of that cultural identity of the Punjab. But of course, on the so the Pakistan Punjab side, they do now by default speak Urdu on the main. Now, Ashley Kandar says Urdu was the main language in Punjab. His own father used to write in Urdu. SSK Trucking comes back and says, look, Urdu was created by the Mughals, then promoted by the British. It's a mixture of Hindi, Punjabi, Sanskrit. Still, it was Punjabi, but written in Urdu. And Ashley comes back and says, I accept your explanation. Thanks for that. I'll just make a general comment and remember asking my father why he was writing backwards. So there's some personal involvement in this. It's quite interesting, actually, that Ashley Kandar's own father was involved in this directly. And SSK Trucking comes back and says, even I used to have a lot of relatives that came from Lenda, Punjab in 1947, only read Urdu newspapers. And then S1N, whatever, comes back and says, Urdu wasn't created by the Mughals. Their official language, for Persian, it was created by the British to divide Hindu and Muslims. Even official language of Maharaja Ranjit Singh was Farsi, apparently. I didn't know that. Urdu is a Persian word, which means camp. It means the language of the people of the camp. Who are these camp people? It was used for Turkish invaders like Mahmud Ghazni, Mahmud Ghori. Urdu was developed fully by the British. Arabic has 28 letters, Farsi has 32, Urdu 39, plus an extra 13, total 52. Indian language has lots of words which can't be pronounced in Arabic and Persian. For example, there's not a letter P in Arabic. If you say Baba in Arabic, it means father, because in Arabic, if you write Papa, it means Baba. So it's actually a very interesting comment, that final comment. Thank you for that. Very educational. So, but I think the whole, the message from this whole thread, and this is actually a fascinating thread, and do read this in detail. A lot of interesting comments in this one. It's all about language, and it just shows the power of language and how linked language is to cultural identity and ergo to geographical identity. And of course, that division in 1947 didn't just divide geography, it divided language, it divided cultures, and of course, as the years have passed. And an interesting parallel to this, actually, is East and West Germany. I visited Berlin some time ago. And it was shocking how when the Berlin Wall came down, a city of all the same people was divided into two. Over the following 20, 30 years that followed, those people diverged in a massive cultural way. And technically they spoke the same language, but because they were governed in a very different way, and this mirrors what happened in the Punjab, divided into Pakistan and then divided into India. Those people, when they were reunified, in 1989, I forget the actual year. Anyway, when they were reunified in the 1980s, when the wall came down, they were the same people divided by 30 odd years that came back where they ended up completely different, culturally different people in just that short span of years. This is what's happened in the Punjab in just a few decades, 7 decades since 1947. Those people have diverged massively, and language is a massive part of that. So James, I think this just shows how easy it is to divide a culture just by literally drawing a geographical line and then diverging their cultures in different directions. It's a fascinating examination almost of humanity and society, and how easy it is to go in different directions.
Absolutely. And I mean, who says our show can't be educational as well as entertaining, Angus? Because I love when our viewers, when they send us information that we can learn from, but also, in the conversations amongst each other, we keep learning. So thank you to that. But it also shows something that we've discussed in the past, Angus, is the importance of that communication from one generation to the next, and the awareness that this individual had about the father and, the writing and that, how it brought a much bigger story of the family history and the cultural history. So it's awesome.
Yeah, so thanks for those comments. They were really interesting. On the same interview, the same discussion, a few more comments here. Mohanda Anoa also commented, Hindus have been slaves and underdogs in their own country for years. Of course, this is the caste system. Then they continue to say, thanks to the British, for the first time in hundreds of years, they're in power. Now they are desperate to hold on to that power and will do anything to any minorities who they feel threaten this newfound power. Now, I would actually slightly temper this comment and saying, and again, we've got to be more specific here. It's not just the Hindus who are in power. Don't forget, there are an awful lot of Hindus who are lower caste, who are Dalits. They are slaves. They are very much slaves in their own country. It's the Brahmins, it is the upper caste who control India. They are the ones who are in power. And it is indeed thanks to the British, when they handed power over, they essentially, whether knowingly or not, and I suspect knowingly, they handed power to the ruling upper caste elite, the Brahmins. And that's the reason why India remains slaves, why it's like 85% of India are in the lower caste. They are slaves in their own nation. I think this is what that comment is all about. And I think this is true. And this is why we keep reiterating this point about the evils of the caste system, because ordinary Hindus who align with Narendra Modi, I don't think you realise what you are actually aligning with. You're aligning with the RSS. You're aligning with ultimately the Brahmanical control of your country, the ruling elite. These are the people that are keeping you in effective enslavement. You will never aspire to better things in your life, and particularly Dalits will never aspire to better things in your lives, because you remain in your own prison of your own making. You have built the bars that form the cage around your own lives. Until you shake off the caste system, the evils of the caste system, you will forever remain slaves. I think you would agree with that, James.
Absolutely. And we can see in areas of the world where certain countries are finally implementing protections against the caste system for those of India descent and other similar situations. So yeah, it's really an important thing to step out and beyond the caste system to make your future a reality.
Indeed. And Vinny Chowan comes back to the same comment, really. The British divide and rule policy. This is how British ran their empire. It was a very simple but very effective strategy, which is divide and rule. It's just ensure that any opposition is divided. And this is what Narendra Modi believes would still work in India, and actually, ironically, is failing, is this divide and rule, divide and conquer policy. And all it's doing, actually, ironically, is it is dividing India, and it is going to deliver Khalistan just almost by sheer definition. The next comment from Mr. Shritam says Punjab will remain part of India forever. No one can divide India. Well, actually, I profoundly disagree. Narendra Modi himself is dividing India. Whether this is part of his strategy for a Hindu Rashtra, this RSS dream of a single Hindu nation, the Hindu Rashtra, whether it's deliberate or not, we don't know. But ultimately, it's actually Narendra Modi who's dividing India. And Mr. Shritam, you can campaign all you want to try and keep this colonial collection of cultures together that forms what is known as India as much as you want. But unfortunately, I think you are like a stone in a river, or even a rock in a river. You can stand firm, but you are working against the flow. The flow is very clearly, that flow is eroding all the rocks standing in its way. That flow is going in one direction, and that one direction is very clear, is that India is breaking apart. And the first part that will break away is the Punjab. It will be Khalistan, James.
Absolutely. And, even playing devil's advocate, if Khalistan wasn't to be separate, you still got to look at Manipur. You got to look at K&J and other regions of the country. I don't think it's realistic to think that India is going to stay one nation forever. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and A Singh wraps up with, we're witnessing the rise of the Khalsa. Zindabad, Zindabad. Absolutely. I think that is what we are seeing. And in fact, I think it's very interesting. There's an interesting a link here to the Sikh Federation UK and the Sikh Federation Canada, and the other Sikh federations spring up everywhere. They are installing their own management team, effectively, based on the original Khalsa, the Khalsa of, obviously the first Guru, but ultimately of the Sikh Empire. It was the 10th Guru. It is that way of managing their unique form, or the Sikh unique form of democracy. That is the Khalsa, and it will be established. And then the final set of comments, James, and again, a little bit of self-indulgence here, some lovely comments, but I wanted to, again, to highlight them to say thank you to each and every one of you that have sent comments like this. HR Video says, thanks for us doing a great job. You appreciate it. We appreciate you lot, because we appreciate the comments that come in. You give us so much support, and it really helps us along. Rup Dummenverk says, great work in promoting the Sikh values, exposing the real face of Hindutva. That's why we're here. We have to get the truth out. We have to try and counteract this narrative that comes out from India. Jagtar Sidhu says, thanks, brothers. Right. The world is watching and waiting for the truth. Again, it's this key word, the truth. What matters is that the truth comes out. Now, James, I think some fellow neighbours to you, Love Deep, and I wonder if neutrality is the same person. They both come up with identical comments. Thanks for raising our voice to support minorities in India. I'm from Brampton in Canada, James.
I think he's repeating himself on a different account. Brampton, way back, that's only about 5,500 miles away from me, that's all.
Okay, other side of the world in European terms then. But hey, it's all the same country. It's close enough, James. Now, Mandeep Bajwabatala, this is actually an old comment, and I've kept this one around because I've never been able to insert it before. But now I hope you're still watching, Mandeep Bajwabatala. You're from San Francisco, and you posted this on another story ages ago. But I wanted to put this to lump it in with other ones as well. So I hope you're still watching. Thank you for that comment. And like Winder saying, talking from Chicago. I think we haven't had people from Chicago commenting before. So thank you, Lakwinder. So thanks for that. And the final comment does come from Hardars saying, thanks, Angus and James. Welcome to the programme. Do you know more and more people are watching your programme? Well, I have noticed actually in the last week or two that our numbers are up actually very healthily, which is marvellous. So thank you to all of you, particularly thank you and welcome to newer members of our audience. We have lots and lots of people who've been watching us for a very long time. And of course, we get loads of comments from lots of regular commenters. Thank you for those. But welcome, a particular welcome if you are new to the channel. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. We try to maintain a nice intimate family in our channel with our audience. We have a very close relationship with our wonderful audience, and we get some lovely comments from many people. So why not join our family? Join the community. Get your comments in, even if it's just a simple hello or Sat Sri Akal. Get that in there. We do love to hear from you, and tell us where you're watching from. So welcome to our new commenters, James.
Yeah, and let us know where you heard of the show. Was it on Facebook groups? Was it through suggestions by by YouTube or friends, family, whatever? Yeah, let us know. We'd love to know where people are actually spreading the word and talking about it.
Indeed, and tell people about us. Get on social media, tell us, send links to some of our shows, but get more people watching. The most important thing is that the truth gets out there. We're up against this mountain of India news outlets. We're against this huge Hindutva IT cell army that are flooding social media, as many of you actually have commented. They are flooding social media, particularly at the moment, with masses and masses of propaganda of anti-Canada, anti-Trudeau, anti-Sikh community, anti-Khalistan propaganda. The only way we can counter that, we can't remove it, but we can try and fill social media, fill YouTube, fill people's devices with the counter narrative. So it's really important that you help us get that truth out there. So spread the word, get people watching this show talking about Sutlej, and let's attract that audience. But on that note, we must wrap up as we've run, as always, well over time. But thank you once again to each and every one of you, particularly those who commented. But thank you if you've been watching us. Thank you for your support. It's very much appreciated. And of course, you can email us directly at message@sutlejtv.com if there's something you'd like to tell us about that you don't want to put in the public domain for whatever reasons. Of course, you can comment below any of our videos. Do keep those comments coming. If they don't appear, don't panic, because sometimes they do get filtered out by YouTube. It does take us a while to get around to approve those. And I would add, I do approve every single comment, even the critical ones. So even if you send a rude critical comment, unless it really is outrageous, I think there's only literally one or two I've ever not published because they were just so rude. But even the rude ones, generally speaking, and the critical ones we do publish. We do like those. They're great to talk about. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me, and it is a goodbye from James.
And everyone stay safe.
Thanks for watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.